Wine to Five is partially funded by Albarello Luxury Hand Soap, an unscented must-have accessory for anyone who loves wine, cooking, and food. For more information, visit albarellosoap.com.
It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to Five. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
Welcome back, everybody, and we are welcoming some guests today as well. Boy, we are all over the world today with Wine to Five. Steph's still hanging out in Italy. I'm in Colorado.
Yes, and our guests, Dr. Matthew Horkey and Charine Tan, are joining us from ArmAs Winery in Armenia, where there's currently a birthday bash for the owner going on. So yay for Skype and the Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they found a nice private room, and the winery was nice enough to let them go back there. So we aren't really joining the party live. They're kind of locked in a back room during the interview. But first, what's going on as far as what we're drinking today? Steph, what is in your glass right now?
Nothing fancy for me. I'm drinking an Aperol Spritz. And we've mentioned them on the show many times, I think. And when we were in Liguria, we had spritz pretty much daily, in the aperitivo hour. And now that we've been in Umbria for over 2 weeks, I have them every now and then. And I thought, this is sort of feeling like a spritz night, even though I have to say, when it comes to pairing spritz, it goes best with sunny patios and people watching.
I have to agree. And I think I told you before, there was a time I thought that was a food group.
Yes, I love it. I think of you when I have spritz now, for sure.
I know. They are good at an aperitivo hour in a dark bar as well. But anyway, story for another day.
That's right. So Val, tell me what's in your glass.
So what's in my glass is a Chateau Saint-Eulalie 2012 Minervois La Livinière La Cantilène. And so hopefully I said that right and didn't butcher it, but it is a blend of Carignan from 100-year-old vines. It's got some Syrah and Grenache in it. It is from the Languedoc, and it's actually one of the Languedoc crus.
Oh, cool.
Which is kind of cool. Yeah, they've got actually some crus. It's only been in the last 6 years or so they've finally got their cru system developed, but this is one of them, and this is really nice. It's a nice inky purple wine. It's definitely got the earthy thing going on that I like, and it's dark fruit. Really kind of, again, I don't always want to use the word jammy, but definitely like cooked fruits and a little bit of minerality and good body. We had it with a pumpkin pasta with sausage last night. It was really good.
Ooh, I love the pumpkin and sausage combo.
Oh,
this time of year.
Sage. Yeah, and sage from our garden. I have to agree. But speaking of people watching.
Yes. Let's talk about our guests. We've had our eyes on the Exotic Wine Travel website and this dynamic duo. So I'm going to have you take it away, Val, with the bio and introduction of these two guys.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, our guests today are Dr. Matthew Horkey and Charine Tan, as Steph mentioned earlier. And we're going to give you just a little bit of background about them, and then we're going to just plug in the interview that we had with them earlier today. In May of 2015, after 4 years of deliberating and planning together, Charine Tan and Dr. Matthew Horkey sold almost all of their possessions, dropped the comfort and security of their lucrative careers, and left Singapore to travel around the world with the dream of building a location-independent business to absorb the world's lessons. Driven by a common passion for wine, they ended up diverting all their attention and resources to the self-study of wine as they traveled through Western Europe, the Caucasus, ex-Yugoslavia, and Mexico in the past year. Uncorking the Caucasus is a first of a series of wine travel books, and they also share wine travel tips, videos, wine-related stories, and exciting finds from the lesser-known wine regions on their website, Exotic Wine Travel. We're going to get on to the interview, and we hope you enjoy this chat with Exotic Wine Travel founders Dr. Matthew Horkey and Charine Tan. What's interesting about what you guys do, first of all, we've seen some of your videos. I believe some of our listeners have seen your videos. Hopefully they're starting to get their hands on the book. We've linked up the book in our store as well. But what's interesting about what you guys do is you guys kind of walked away from your last life. You sold everything. And then you got started investigating the lesser-known wine regions. So I think what we're curious about, what did you guys do in your last lives?
So for me personally, by training, I went to Michigan State University, got a degree in geology, chemistry, and then I took extra classes for pre-med. I went to chiropractic college, and I had a private chiropractic practice in Singapore.
Yeah, and this is Charine here. So I came from a business background. I graduated from a communication business university, spent about 8 years, by now will be about 9-10 years in the corporate world. I went from branding, marketing, public relations, management consulting, and branding. So basically went through almost all of the functions in a corporate setting, and decided that ultimately I just want to go with what I really enjoy, that's writing and drinking wine.
Well, what's interesting is, Matthew, you've got a background in geology and chemistry, and these are all things that we do explore a little bit in the world of wine, so I think it set you up really well for wine.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got Charine, who has this marketing and communications background, which is absolutely genius. And I understand Charine actually grew up with a wine and spirits in her background as well. It's something that she enjoyed, where it's kind of a later in life thing for you.
Yeah, you want to chime in, Charine?
No, you go ahead.
Basically, I grew up in a pretty Protestant small town, 2,000 people. My parents don't drink. Maybe my mom would have a drink with her friends on bowling night on Thursday, but there was no alcohol in my house, and I didn't even drink until probably I was 21. And in 2004, as my senior year at Michigan State University, I saw a little film called Sideways, and I was completely blown away by the intellectual aspects of wine. Mm-hmm. And I never had really, besides having communion wine at church, because my parents made me go to church when I was growing up every Sunday, and I looked forward to having that wine every once a month, but I didn't really drink it. It's so funny. I loved it. I loved the tanginess. I loved the sensations on my mouth. But then after watching that film, I said, you know what? I want to drink wine. So from that point, I started to drink wine. But, when you're a student, especially when you're in America, you can't really afford the best stuff.
Right.
And it really wasn't till I graduated from graduate school. When I was in graduate school, I took a trip to Italy, Slovenia, Western Europe, tasted some of the wine there, changed my perspective. I traveled around the world for 6 months after I graduated. I ended up in Southeast Asia. And when Charine and I first met, she kind of acclimated me to the finer things in life in terms of fine dining, great wine, because my dad's a farmer. I'm a hillbilly. I'm basically a hillbilly.
Oh my gosh!
And then Chianti Classico for our first wine. Chianti
Classico was our first state wine.
Oh, and then now, how did you get started investigating these wine regions then?
I think it started with the idea of us always wanting to travel together and have a location-independent lifestyle. So after planning together and saving for about 4 years, we didn't have an exact deadline, to say when we want to start traveling. But when the moment came and we realized that we are ready, we left Singapore in May 2015. We went through Italy, Switzerland, Portugal, Spain, and then into the Caucasus as well. And it didn't really occur to us until much later that we realized we were traveling to all of the wine regions. And without really planning for it, we were just getting driven and attracted to the wine region, because wherever we go, we always look for food and culture and wine. So when then it finally came together, we traveled through the Caucasus, Turkey, Armenia, and Georgia. We had a lot of interesting stories and experiences. That's when we decided that, hey, this is an idea. It's not just a business idea, but because of what we went through, we really wanted to share the stories that we found here with the rest of the world. At the same time, we saw that there's a need for diversity in wine. So these are a couple of areas that we wanted to bring to the wine world. And
also, I want to piggyback off that. I love what both of you are doing, Stephanie and Valerie, because just exposing audiences to wine. When we were in Singapore, Singapore's a great fine wine market, one of the best in Asia. We were going at tasting dinners every night. We were trying things every night. And when we started our travels, for me, it was supposed to be a sabbatical because I got rid of my business, my practice. But all we were doing, we went to Barbaresco, Barolo, Etna, Tuscany, the Douro, Galicias, Ribera del Duero, Rioja. And we were spending all our resources just on visiting winemakers, talking with them, drinking wine, eating great food. And it really occurred to us when we were in the Caucasus, which is technically, archaeologically speaking, the birthplace of wine, that, hey, you know what? If we really want to get into this, it would be very difficult for us, who is basically kind of nobodies starting out, to get into talking about Italian wine, Spanish wine, Californian wine, Portuguese, German wine. I love German wine. But we could make a niche for ourselves talking about some of these really exciting wine regions throughout the world.
Yeah, from a business perspective as well, the millennials are having quite a different set of preferences. I'm sure you've heard it several times as well. People are looking for stories and wine. And sure, definitely, we love our Burgundy, we love our Bordeaux, but generally, a lot of consumers are looking for new stories, new history into wine. So we really think that places, the lesser known regions, will have a lot to offer to the wine world. And on top of that, maybe on a more philosophical level, it's not just about wine. It's also because Armenia doesn't have an extremely high tourism rate right now. And of course, Eastern Turkey, because of what's going on, it's not often that someone from Asia or the US might visit them. So we believe that wine is actually a lovely platform to let people understand people from elsewhere in the world, and to show other people that there is a softer side in every country, and there's always an interesting culture and story for people to explore.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Valerie and I are huge fans of anything that is an obscure wine in some way. So what you guys are doing, highlighting these areas is perfectly aligned with, what we're trying to bring to the wine world at large as well with Wine 25. So I think it's great that you guys are offering that, even though you're also passionate about, the more popular wine regions. You're right. I mean, it's a great way to, make yourselves known and carve out something special, just like what we're trying to do too. I mean, we're trying not to be just another wine podcast. And I think that's what you guys are offering the world too. So definitely kudos to you. I do have a question though about did the book idea come first, or did the exotic wine travel videos and website come first?
Well, we were traveling through Turkey, Georgia, Armenia. Charine always, when we were planning our trip, Charine always wanted to go to Turkey. Yeah. I always wanted to go to Georgia, and then we both wanted to go to Armenia. So we said we're going to combine everything. And by the time that we got through Armenia, because the modern wine industry here, even though they have the oldest winery in the world, historically speaking, the Aremenia One Cave dates that back to 4100 BC. But obviously wine production was kind of shut down during Soviet time. Their modern wine industry is only 5 years old. The first vintage was 2010. And when we started talking with all these winemakers and seeing the passion, we said, you know what? People need to know what's going on outside the big wine region. So the book was first, and then we started transitioning into doing videos, writing about it, and that's what we're working on now currently.
Yeah, but that was also, the book came halfway between our travel. I think it was right after Turkey, before we got to Armenia, Georgia. That's when we felt like, hey, the genesis happened around that time. Yeah.
And do you guys have now a favorite place that, of all of your travels, what's your favorite country to hang out in, whether it's wine or not, what's your favorite?
So I knew you were going to ask this question. So I would probably put it this way for wine, because for me, everything starts and ends with wine. We're thinking about wine 24/7. For me, for authentic old world experiences, like old wine visits that you hear about that happened that happened 30, 40, 50 years ago. Of course, I wasn't born then, but the stories you hear, it's Serbia and the Serbian wine scene going on there. For excitement in terms of indigenous varieties, I love Croatia, and Croatia is just fantastic. Georgia is also up there because it just engulfs you with their old wine traditions, people, food, culture, and then the model of what wine and enotourism is moving to is Baja California, and plus the food there is outstanding.
Yeah, well, it's so hard to pick. It's like, who's your favorite child? Who's your favorite aunt? Yeah. Oh. But I would say I'm going to start out with a really generic answer. I think I always fall back to wanting to go back to Italy because of the food, the culture, and again, the wine and the people. The people are really passionate and fun. Also, the Caucasus, this area will always be my baby. It's always, like I said earlier, this is the genesis of our business and our book and our new career. So I always feel that, this is a place that I want to come back every year and see how it progresses. And I want to be there to witness how this entire region evolves.
And you're in Italy right now. Where are you? Where are you at currently?
Yeah, so I'm in Perugia, so in the Umbria region.
Ooh, some great wines in Umbria.
Did you guys did you make it over here?
I did not, but we're going to be in Friuli probably in January.
Yeah.
I love all Italian wines. Like I love the obscure. I love Ciro. I love Aglianico del Voltura. We love the Sicilian wines. We love Etna. Castel del Monte is one of my personal friends. So I love all Italian wines. Umbria, I love all the Montefalco Rossos, the Sagrantino de Montefalcos. I mean, Umbria has some fantastic wines.
He loves his Italian wine. And there's always this, we love all our wine, but, we always have this little argument about French wine or Italian wine, because I generally prefer French wine. Yeah.
I wanted to mention that the Baja wines that you guys are showcasing on your videos had me so thrilled because I've been wondering, just so curious ever since I read a Wall Street Journal article about the wineries down there, that I thought, how do I get there? And, what is the scene really like besides just this one article? So it's cool that you're following up on that. And how did you guys go about getting there?
Well, so the article is probably by Letty, right? In the Wall Street Journal. So first of all, it's not so easy to get there. We actually, right now, because we put all our investment in our original company, we're kind of bootstrapping where we can. So we basically took the trolley from San Diego. We did a week tasting in Santa Barbara County because I love Santa Barbara County, my favorite Californian wines, which was awesome. Tasted about 350 wines in about 6 days. Took the trolley from San Diego right down to the border, walked across the border, and then took a bus to Ensenada. And that's where we based ourselves for 2.5 months. And the infrastructure there actually for wine travel is phenomenal. They're really building, they're really trying to replicate Napa Valley, basically, which sometimes can feel a little too commercial, but there's a lot of intricacies. We're working on making the first English guide to Baja wines. And because we spent so many times, 2.5 months with the producers, tasting every single day, being in the trenches, and there's lots of little intricacies of what's happening down there. But all in all, I'm telling you right now, there are a handful of wines, and I'm not talking about, they're nice wines. I'm talking about their world-class wines I'm going to bring to any of our friends that are drinking super high-end wines.
Yeah.
We're talking about first growths. We're talking about high-end Burgundies. We're talking about the cult cabs from Napa. We'll bring those in front of anybody.
Yeah. In fact, we brought, I think, 3 bottles to the winemakers here, and one of them is Antonini.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of them is, there's one winery here in Armenia. Sorry to flip this up. Their consultant is Alberto Antonini. So he's like one of the top 10 consultants in the world. So.
Wow. Hey, do you guys know Sandra Fernandez?
I do not know that name.
She's a Mexican sommelier, and she's apparently somebody in the Mexican wine world that you guys might want to connect with, who could probably work. We can connect you guys on Twitter if you'd like.
Yeah.
Or just find her at Sandra Vinos, And we actually sat in a wine course with her. And she is absolutely phenomenal, but I would bet she could get you guys some really good insight and kind of, she'd probably be a really good resource for you guys.
Good suggestion, Val.
Yeah, Steph and Val, have you two tasted Mexican wines before?
Yes.
Just in that seminar.
Yeah.
Do you, Steph and Val, what were your impressions from the wines that you tasted from the Caucasus?
The Georgian wines, I personally am a big fan of the orange wines ever since I tasted some wine from a Friulian winemaker way back in Vinitaly about 6 years ago. So I'm a huge fan of wines that hang out on the skin and get that beautiful copper color and the richness that comes with them that makes them almost like a red wine in terms of organoleptic characteristics.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we were really, I think, taken aback by the fact that she had, Steph, like 14 or 15 wines there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can't say that there was any one or two producers that really stood out. I mean, it was kind of a sensory overload. I mean, you were really tasting through these wines quite quickly, actually, and trying to absorb all of the history and information in the lecture at the same time. But it made an impression for sure. And the Turkish wines, that seminar, that was the same year, wasn't it, Val?
Yeah, they were both in New Orleans last year.
That's right. And the Turkish wines, I think I could say that I probably would serve those to my geeky friends, who are really into wine and maybe collect wine, probably before I would serve some of the ones that we tasted from Georgia. But that doesn't mean I didn't appreciate them.
Right.
Okay. Oh, before, because I'm going to be a spokesperson for the Georgians and for Australians, because Orange County in Australia, they hate when people use the term orange wine. So everybody likes the term amber wines because there is an orange appellation in the works in Australia.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah, it's funny because when I'm sure when we head out to the US and generally in the international market, most people will refer it as orange wine. Mm-hmm. But in all of Georgia, when you look at the menu, they always put it as amber wine.
Amber wines, yeah.
I think that's a really good factoid.
No, it is good because a lot of people even here, like Karen McNeil doesn't like the term orange wines, I believe.
Yep.
A lot of people here are like, the wines, they're not orange. In fact, in Italy, they call it ramato, which means like copper. And that's what I know Paolo called his Pinot Grigio. A lot of wine writers do not like the term orange wine either. I think it's something that a lot of people are like, I don't think it's popular enough where a lot of people even get it.
We're on the subject now.
Yeah.
Because Charine and I are actually pretty passionate about amber wines, even though they're so unique. First of all, we're on the We're going to go on the record right now. We hope we're the first people to say this, that besides champagne, amber wine is the most food-friendly wine for every single dish. It can take you through every course
I agree.
of the meal.
I agree.
Every course. And number two, there in Georgia right now, there are not just funky, rustic, barnyardy wines. There are wines coming out with such incredible power, balance, and elegance that it's completely mind-boggling. Karen McNeil wrote about it in her chapter of Georgia, about how it gives these sensations she never had before. We were actually recently last month on a press trip from major wine writers from all over Europe.
From Belgium, from Netherlands, and we're doing a tasting together.
We did a tasting for a week, and we already knew this stuff because we had some of these wines, and some of them were just completely blown away. Yeah, they were just completely blown away.
We tasted a Rakatsitali that was aged in the Quavery for 3 years.
The buried amphora. Quavery is Georgian for buried amphora in the ground. It was aged for 3 years, and it was
everyone's favorite.
It was clean. It was elegant. It was powerful at the same time. It was grippy. And there are some just people, when they think about amber wines, there are some excellent examples out there. We've tasted excellent ones from Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia.
Now, did you guys have the Pheasant's Tears? Is that the one you're talking about?
No, there's we like pheasant. Well, we're very good friends with John.
Okay.
Pheasant's Tears.
And he helped us with the press trip, but there are a lot. He's actually kind of like the Angelo Gaia of Georgia, so to speak. So speaking of which, we love Gaia's wines. But anyways, he's he's really making the movement. But there's about 20 to 30 producers of 100% organic, natural yeast, natural, biodynamic, Quavery wines. And he's kind of leading the charge, so he gets the most press, and his wines can be very good, but there's other ones that are just ethereally good.
Yeah, there are a couple of producers that make maybe 5,000, 8,000 bottles, and there's so many of them, and all of them can make really excellent wine.
One of them was on Decanter's Top 10 Wines of 2015. One of the editors picked it, and it was Ramas Nicoladze. His wine. It was Sitska Solakori. He only makes about 3,000 bottles total a year.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
How do you guys get around any kind of the language barriers, or are there any?
I would say to look at it, yes, first of all, there's a language barrier, and we are often very lucky to somehow bump into a person in the community that speaks English. And even in Serbia and Georgia as well, we were led by someone who later becomes a very good friend of ours, who will take us around and all that. But also at the same time, in Serbia in particular, also in Macedonia, Montenegro, we can spend, it's amazing with wine. You can spend 5 hours, even 8 hours, 10 hours with a winemaker. And this really happened. They don't speak English, but yet we get along perfectly fine using gesture and expression. And we had a good relationship. Even when we were in Serbia, we got along really well with one of the winemakers. We went back to his place every day to meet him and his wife, just, having a toast together. And yeah, somehow we managed.
But for the listeners out there, for a practical solution to this, I would say the Vivino app is so powerful. Because in America, we have a lot of different, you have Delectable, you have now Wine Searcher. There's a lot of people integrating this kind of technology. Yeah. But worldwide, Vivino has a super strong following. And we always would connect with, I always keep up our Vivino account, so we would connect with the top 5 people in the country that were rated in the country. And they would always, we'd meet in person. They're so passionate about showing, a couple of people would write us 5-page emails on where we need to go and then call for us.
Yeah, wow. Even for Facebook as well, it's not just a personal social network. So Matt usually tries to maintain the Vivino aspect, and I take care of our Facebook account mostly. And even for Facebook as well, there is a hashtag wine lovers community. And even you could just simply Google search for, let's say, I'm in Armenia now. I would search for Armenian wine on Facebook and see who talks about Armenian wine. It's quite easy to get connected with at least one winemaker or one sommelier in the country. And, you can start your research from there.
Wow, it's very resourceful. Now, do you guys speak any other languages?
Charine is fluent in many different dialects.
I speak Mandarin and a couple of different dialects, but we are both pretty good at picking up a new language. So, we can't speak fluently, but when we're in a country, most of the time we practice basic manner, learn how to say, count from 1 to 10 and say thank you, no, little things that get us around.
And in these small countries, the way the world is so international, they have to go to these trade shows, and most of the modern winemakers or people that are actually marketing their wines, their English is at least passable.
So it is going to be fun to see these wine regions emerging. And I'm going to ask you guys something before we get to our last question. And this is just off the cuff. I had somebody contact me this morning who's doing an article, and there is a growing popularity of wine. But he says, why do you think wine is becoming so popular with people? And do you guys have any recommendations for learning about wine?
I learned for the first place before I get really technical, like you, Steph and Val, like you two are. But it was just from trying something new every day. I think the best tip I ever got was I was a huge fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, still am. Okay. When he was doing Wine Library TV. And I remember one thing he said, if you want to learn about wine, every time you go to a wine store, get something brand new.
Yeah.
And just try something brand new. And I think that's still the best advice I've ever heard. I don't know about you, Charine.
Yeah, and I agree as well. But just like every aspect and every skill, it's not just about experience is really important, but you also have to read a lot to make sense of the world or a certain skill. So I think besides just tasting a lot of wine, we all people who are interested in wine and want to get themselves to the next level, they should definitely pick up some wine books as well and learn about the technical aspect or aroma or how wine is made. And that will give them a much deeper relationship and a more profound experience with wine.
Like your favorites, the host you had, Carrie McNeil, the Wine Bible, is still my favorite reference book of all time.
I agree. I think that's an essential for anybody who wants to learn more about wine. But so do you have any idea why it's becoming so popular? You guys have a really good cultural perspective right now.
I would imagine also it is a social movement that we as a society are moving towards back into the whole intellectual revolution. And I think that wine has that stands for a certain part of intellectual and cultural aspect of society. And I think it's also this sense of awareness in us that wants to make us dig deeper into the sensory aspect of life.
And I also think too, people without knowing, like Val and Steph, I could talk to you two probably for days because I love talking to fellow wine geeks. But wine has such a metaphysical aspect that people don't realize. I guess a good example for listeners would probably Paul Lukács' book, I think History in a Glass. I can't remember the name of the actual title, but talking about, why wine was actually considered a divine drink, its connection between Mother Nature, God, whatever you want to call it, and man. And in the old days, how it was essential, basically, for life. So I think when people, especially in America, we're all kind of immigrants, right? So we're kind of a mix of all that. That's still kind of embedded in our genetics, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Enlightenment age, right? People are much more into organic food, healthy lifestyle, wine, and literature. All of this, like what you said, it's all more on a metaphysic level. But if I could just take a jab at a more practical look at it, it's probably because information of any kind is so accessible now. And when there's information, it piques your interest to find out more about a certain area. And also wine on its own is also becoming so much more accessible. In the past, I would imagine, let's say if you were in Spain or in Italy or France, where wine has always been part of their daily culture and their food and gastronomy, that's when wine isn't intimidating. But if, I come from Singapore, or if you're from Hong Kong, or even the US as well, just take California, for example, it's still taken as, it's for certain people, they will see it as a drink for the privilege or a luxury drink. But it's no longer the case because even a simple wine, we are beginning to understand that wine doesn't have to be expensive, and there are a lot of well-made, affordable wines as well.
And the last simple answer, one sentence, probably to sum up that even better, is it goes great with food.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of summing it up, guys, we could chat with you all day. But the last question that we ask all of our guests, and you guys probably have so many fun or funny or amusing stories that happened during your travels. So what is the funniest thing that's happened to you guys that has to do with wine? I love it. They're laughing already, Steph.
Your story.
You tell one and I tell. No, you tell one.
That's your story.
No, that's your story.
That is so cute. See, we've never had two people on the show that are like, no, you tell it. No, that's my story.
It's because there's so many stories.
Okay, you tell one and I'll tell one real quickly.
Amusing stories. So was it in Serbia, right? Was it East Serbia? Well, in this is a wine region that used to have 300 over cellars. But now they are still making wine, but most of the people have already moved out of the village. Do you remember what it's called?
It's called Rajec and Roglivo.
Yeah, so they are currently on the UNESCO Heritage List. They're pending to be one of the UNESCO Heritage Site. And one day, Matt wanted to drive all the way up to that village to take a look what's over there because we heard that there are lots of abandoned cellars. We're driving around for, I think, more than 45 minutes. It was just completely quiet, and the houses was
was just run down. We saw no one except maybe for every half an hour we saw really old couple, like maybe 80 years old, and they were plowing and working in the field. So it's funny, from the outside, that looks like a lot of cellar, but there was no sign of wine at all. Until when we take a turn in the corner, this man walked towards us. We're in the car. He knocked on our window. So I went out the window and he said, wine or vino? And then I was like, yeah. And I was smiling. And then he said, come in. I mean, he did not say come in, but he gestured and said, come in with me. So he took us into his house, which was like maybe 10 meters away. And he told us to go to the top floor. And it was this really tiny room. The house inside, there were a couple of really old, huge barrels. So he brought us to the second floor. It's kind of like a loft room. And he told us to sit down. Good God, I have to send you a picture of that room later after this
yeah.
Yes.
The room was filled with a ton of old pictures, black and white pictures, guns, knife, taxidermy items, and it was really, really weird. So he left us in the room, went downstairs, and he said, wine. Okay, wait. I mean, at that time, I still could speak a little bit of Serbian, so he spoke in Serbian, I understood. And then he went down, and he blasted music in the house. Like, it was quiet at first, and then he raised the music right to the top. He was blasting music. He sat on the first floor and started smoking. So I was a little bit worried at that point. I turned to Matt, and then he just like shrugged and said, why not? Let's just wait. Okay, we waited. I think it was about 15, 20 minutes. I couldn't stand any longer, so I walked out, I looked out, the guy was still smoking there. And so I was kind of frightened at that point. But anyhow, I went down and I asked, what's going on? Could we taste some wine? And he was just, sure. He finally brought us some wine. And it turned out really awesome. His family was sitting right outside the house as well, and they weren't there at first. It was amusing and scary at that point, but it also tells a very good story about travel and wine as well. We really believe in going to places with a soft and trusty heart. I mean, sure, you have to be you have to be careful wherever you go, but don't be paranoid. Trust people to be good, because in the end, we all come from different culture. We function differently, and not everyone is like a city person always waiting to get things done.
Right.
What's important is we really use our body and our heart to really feel and communicate with people.
And that was an awesome story. And I'll share just a more kind of romantic one, so to speak. So we both left the security of our jobs, my business, to build this location-independent business upon wine, which, everybody's always like, oh, it's so tough, blah, 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 but everything's tough.
Yeah.
So we definitely have had our doubts throughout the way, but there's just little things that actually push us and tell us we're doing the right thing. So when we were here last year in Armenia, the only Armenian wine I know about is called Zora. It's very famous all around the world. He exports a lot. His wine consultant is Antonini from Tuscany, one of the top 10 consultants in the world. And it's made from the indigenous grape Aremenia, which is pre-phylloxera. There's never been phylloxera up here because it's high altitude, 1,500, so like 5,000 feet, volcanic soil. And we kept emailing him saying, we're writing this book, can we visit? And he said, I don't take any visitors, I'm sorry. You can get my wines here in Yerevan, in the capital. So we said, okay, whatever, we're going to try. He's Italian, Armenian. He worked in fashion in Milan. He still works in fashion in Milan, but he started the winery here. We went to the wine region, Vajec de Zor, and I knew the village that the winery was actually in, and the village is in the middle of nowhere. And somehow I made the right turn, and I found the winery, but we didn't get in, obviously. So I said, at least I got to see the winery. We've already tasted the wines in the capital. We went back to our guest house in the wine region, and the next morning, out of the room pops the owner of Zora.
Yeah.
And Charine was pushing me. She's like, you got to talk to him. You got to talk to him. And I was a little nervous. I was like, does he speak English? I don't know. She's like, I looked it up. He does.
Yes, the power of research.
Yeah, the power. So I spoke to him, And I said, we love your wines. I love what you're doing. This is my project. I'm writing a book. And then he said, you want to come up with me to the winery? I have to go up there right now. He's like, I live in Milan full time, but during harvest season, I'm obviously here. So you want to come up? And we went up, and we got a chance to. The only people that really have been up there are masters of wine or Jancis Robinson writers and all that kind of people. So we got a chance to taste one of his new wines that was previously unreleased. And then this year we spent probably 3-4 days with him tasting every day, and it just little things like that.
Pure serendipity.
Yeah, I think when you make the right step, I love the Thoreau quote where he says, when a man walks confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life that he imagined, he's going to meet with success in common hours. So just little things like that.
So persistence, really. Isn't it the key to a lot of things?
Yeah, exactly. So... But by the way, I have to play. His wines are excellent. So you two, if we ever meet in person, we will try some.
Can I get a second chance? No, I want to tell something quite funny too. Okay. in Serbia, there was this other guy. He's called Gaga. He owns a winery, Ivanovic. In Serbia, he has the reputation or the moniker. He's called the Zen Master. So again, the first time we met him, he speaks excellent English, by the way. So we went to his house for tasting, and it was a really cold day in Serbia. And the first thing he said to us when we stepped into his tasting room, he said, "All right, guys, it's really cold. So we either have to set the fire up really high up, or you have to drink really fast."
Oh my God.
Great first impression.
That was a 9-hour tasting, but anyways, those are our stories.
Oh my God, those are great stories, guys, and we will definitely have to all meet up in person. That is a must. That is a must. We'll have to figure that out.
I agree.
How long are you going to be in Italy for?
Oh, I leave next Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Well, we applied to go to the Professional Wine Writers Symposium in Napa Valley. I don't know if you know, at Meadowood. Karen McNeil's speaking there. Because we bumped into somebody that was on the board, and he suggested that we apply. So nice. hopefully maybe we'll see you in somewhere in the States in the next year.
Oh, that would be awesome, guys. That would be so awesome. But I think we've been yakking away here for like an hour. Yeah. And so I think we're almost an hour. One more thing.
Yes.
Tell our listeners where they can find your book, where they can find you guys in the interwebs and spaces, the internet spaces and social media, all that good stuff.
Right. So we try to be really good, or we try to be really hardworking with SEO. If you just go onto Google search engine and search for exotic wine travel, you should be able to find everything. So our main website is www.exoticwinetravel.com. We also are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. All of our handle is Exotic Wine Travel. Anything else that I'm missing out?
And the book is available on Amazon.com right now currently, and we have future books. We're gonna finish up our Croatian book very soon. Baja California. Gotta get that out before any other English writer writes that. And then also we've got projects coming up on the ex-Yugoslavia, possibly Moldova as well.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, guys!
How exciting!
That is going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting stuff coming out of there. And I think it's just stuff that we should focus on more because, again, as part of wine culture, as part of why we all love wine, and there's just everybody that says that they know everything about wine. Well, there's a lot more to learn.
Thank you so much, and I hope Valerie and Stephanie, we get a chance to all meet in person and we have lots of exotic wines in our cellar in Michigan. And then hopefully we can kick back one of those someday.
Yeah, definitely. Today's a great conversation to have to start something, a good relationship with both Stephanie and Valerie. Hope to see you on the road sometime and explore lesser known wine regions with you.
Oh,
or more known. It's okay. More known is okay too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You guys were so much fun, and I know we're gonna have to get together eventually. It's just gonna have to happen, and it'll be epic.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, enjoy your party too, you guys.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being patient with us for the setup. You two, Stephanie, Val, have excellent day, and in Vino Veritas, hope to see you soon.
Hope to catch up again. Yeah.
Arrivederci.
Bye-bye.
Arrivederci, ciao, ciao,
Bye.
ciao.
Those two were like double trouble, like double the fun, seriously, because we've never had two guests at the same time. And because you can tell that they're together in the same room, you know, there was so much energy going on that they were playing off each other. It was really cute. I love the last part where they were talking about who's going to tell what story. You know,
I know that was so cute, and you know what, guys? I mean, that was a treasure trove of hashtag WD5 challenge stuff to
and factoids
to draw from as well. Yeah. So for those of you that do read the blog, we're going to put this next factoid in the blog. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a lot of content because we don't transcribe the whole interview into our blog. Val's just not doing it, and neither is Steph. So you got to listen to the show if you want the content. But we will put a factoid in there for you. And this is from the book Uncorking the Caucasus, and we'll have a link of how to get that book. It's in our store. Armenia, where they were today, it's believed to have the oldest winery in the world. Although we know that winemaking and grape growing goes back even further to Georgia, which is around the same Caucasus area based on the Caucasus Mountains. Georgia's winemaking does date back to 8,000 BC. However, the caves at Aremenia in Armenia do date back to almost 4,000 BC. Jancis Robinson also mentions this in her book, The Oxford Companion to Wine, the new edition. And she also mentions the archaeological evidence in the book and describes the caves. And this announcement has only been made since 2011.
Yeah, so that's kind of new. I mean, I've got a lot of wine books that are much older than 2011. So
I know. So I think that's a really cool thing. This book is really a really good resource for people who want to learn about those wine regions that we never hear about so much.
Yeah, precisely. So that's great. Well, I think because I'm not going to be here much longer in Italy, I definitely want to give some shout outs before the end of this show and before the end of my trip. So, moving on to this, thank you. Giuseppe Nuzzacci is the owner and operator of the apartment that I'm staying in. It's called Villa Nuba. And the website has some great pictures and stuff, but we have really enjoyed being here. And I can tell you a lot more about it. You can see the pictures on Facebook and stuff. But wow, definitely would recommend this place. Really great hospitality and everything. Now, another person I want to recognize is Susan Guerra, and she is the owner and operator of her new business called Via del Vino Food and Wine Tours in Perugia. So definitely look for her business. Her website is not up yet, but she has been so helpful giving me recommendations for restaurants and things. But tomorrow she's organizing a truffle hunt for us.
Fun.
So she has been a great resource, and we've done things that we wouldn't have done if we had not met her. And we met her through Jeremy Parzan, so from Do Bianchi. And then lastly, I want to thank Joe Raymer. He took such good care of us when we visited Scaccia Diavoli's winery, and he's part of the team. He helps at the winery, but he is such an interesting fellow, and he's a musician, and he also owns his own wine bar in Foligno called Microclima Vini e Vinili. So it's a vinyl and wine bar where he plays all music from his vinyl collection, and he loves to talk music, and so he was so fabulous. So yeah, so interesting, and so many great people here. And if you want any more recommendations from me or any more details, reach out on social media.
That's right. And my shout out this week go to, the first one is Yaya's Euro Bistro. Have you ever eaten their stuff?
Is it in Denver?
It's in the Denver Tech Center.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it, but I've never been.
Superb. Absolutely superb. And we don't eat out a lot because,
Because you're a good cook, really.
Well, thank you. And we want what we want when it comes to wine and glasses. But this place, we had a lovely lunch there yesterday. Sam was our server. And I'm going to tell you, from the time you walk in and see the giant wine chillers, you already know they have it down. They've got the little stemware stations where the guy's polishing the glassware, just like we used to. Mm-hmm. They totally have a great wine program. They got the tablets. And if you choose, like, buy the glass, and you can click on a label and read more about the wine.
Wow.
And, oh, yeah, it is a super cool program. But it's not just that. It's the selection of wines that they had, not only by the bottle, but by the glass.
Nice.
They had superb stemware. And, oh, by the way, they bring the bottle to your table and pour it when you're ordering wine by the glass.
No, I love that, too. And when we were in Assisi, that's what they did during our lunch. It's classy.
It's classy. It's how I was trained by Italian sommeliers. You always brought the wine to the table and poured the glass. And that way people knew what they were getting. It does add a touch of class. And, you know, I have to mention, I've been served the wrong wine a couple times.
Yeah, I always wonder sometimes, I'm like, is this what I ordered?
A lot of times it's funny, but it's not. And I've actually had to say, hey, can I see the bottle? They're like, oh, you ordered the Burgundy, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, I did. And they had poured me a Barbera, and I knew it.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? And so what that does is waste a little bit of time. And then you've got to have that uncomfortable conversation like you don't trust your server or the bartender or whatever.
Awkward.
I know. It's a little smudge on the dining experience that I just don't appreciate. So great job at Yaya's Bistro. They just did everything right yesterday. And it was an excellent, and it was very easy to get to from Colorado Springs. It was maybe a 35-minute drive. The traffic wasn't bad. It was awesome.
I've been wanting to go. So now that you've given them the shout out, I think I definitely will make a point to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a good experience. And the food was fantastic, too. I mean, that's really why you go. But you can have the whole experience there, and we do appreciate that. Next shout-out is to Side Hustle Wino. Side Hustle Wino wrote her very first blog post yesterday, and she gave a little shout-out to Wine to Five, which we thought was so cool. And she's been kind of a hardcore listener for a while when she sits in her Atlanta traffic, and she's listening to the podcast, and we kind of help her get through. And she also mentions a couple of her favorite books, which are some of our favorite books.
Yeah.
How to Taste Wine by Jancis. And the Bible. She's having Bible study with Karen McNeil. The Wine Bible by Karen McNeil. And, basically tells her story and how everybody's wine story is different. So we appreciate Side Hustle Wino beginning her wine journey and including us as part of it.
Yeah, and congratulations to her for launching her blog.
Absolutely. And go, love her on Facebook. She's just starting her Facebook page. So look for Side Hustle Wino on Twitter, on Facebook. Check out her WordPress blog. It's really nicely written. And tell her Val and Stuff sent you. Yeah, so be part of the fun.
Totally.
And then, of course, Libsyn. Libsyn, as you guys may or may not know, they do host this podcast for us. They're our Liberated Syndication podcast host. They have featured us before on their weekly podcast, or bi-weekly podcast, The Feed. And we were part of one of the Rockin' Libsyn podcasts where we got to talk for 5 minutes about how we get started. So all the text of that feature is in their blog this week. So we linked it up on our Facebook page. Go check it out. Libsyn's been super responsive on Twitter. They've retweeted us a couple times, our latest episode, and they've been super great to work with. And if you're getting ready to start a podcast, I'm going to tell you what, they're the ones I recommend. They have been a superb hosting service for us at Wine to Five, and we wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah, hands down, and we love them.
Yep. On to Patreon love. Steph, you want to talk about our Patreon supporters a little bit?
Sure.
Our show would not be possible without you, our listener community. To find out more about how you can support Wine to Five show, please go to patreon.com, Wine to Five podcast.
Well, first of all, big thank you to our Patreon supporters, and we want to send you guys some love. To the Tenacious Tasters, you are just as dedicated to our Wine to Five podcast as you are to your adult beverage, wine or otherwise. We appreciate your tenacity. That goes to Jeff E. from the hilarious drinking show We Like Drinking, and to our other Patreon supporters, they are the It's Not 5 o'clock and We Don't Care listeners. You want your podcast when you want it and your wine when you want it. Nobody is going to tell you when it's time to pull that cork. So thank you to Meg from South Dakota, Clay from Arizona, and John all the way over there in California.
That's right. We love you guys. Again, without our listeners and our listener community, again, Steph and I would just be mumbling to ourselves and drinking. So we're so glad you're out there. But this brings us to the end of the show. Steph, let's take it home.
We hope you'll share Wine25 with your friends and online community, and we certainly appreciate all your involvement and feedback. Leave us a burning wine question or comment on SpeakPipe, and while you're at it, go out to iTunes and show us some love. There in the form of a awesome iTunes review. 5 stars. And we also are on iHeartRadio, if you guys didn't know that. So there's so many great ways to share, and we'd appreciate it if you shared us with all of your wine-loving friends in your life. So please visit us on our website, winetwofive.com. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and Google+. And if you want to build your collection of wine books, like the one that we talked about today, you can find them on our online store on our Wine25 website. All of these links will be in the show notes for everybody. One more thing, connect with Val on Twitter at WineGalUnboxed, or on the Vino with Val Facebook page, and on Instagram as Vino with Val. And connect with me on Twitter at Albarello Soap and Albarello Soap's Facebook page and YouTube channel. I am also dabbling on Instagram as the Wine Heroine.
And one more thing, guys. Don't forget to use hashtag W25Challenge when you are trying new wines and drinks, and you can win an opportunity to co-host the show with us. But until next week, cheers!
Thank you for listening to the Wine25 podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.